Welcome back to the Hope Dealers podcast. If you're just joining us, my name is Sean Fitzpatrick. I'm your host, and we are so excited to be here today with our Southside OKC program manager, Mr. Trevor Mathis. How's it going, man?
It's going great, man. Life's good. God is good.
God is good. Always good. You had a busy day so far?
I have. I woke up with a house tour with the PNR. Hopefully he's coming in. He put a deposit down the day.
Okay.
I think doing house tours with people and meeting them in person has been more effective than doing a phone interview. So I've tried to incorporate that as much as I can.
So it was a house tour with a potential resident?
Yeah.
Okay. That's really cool. I got to do one of those. That doesn't happen for every resident, though, right?
No, most of them don't because they're in rehab or something. Mm-hmm. But if they live in the city and they're not in rehab, I try to get them at the house so they can see what the house looks like and what they're walking into before they get into it, just in case they have any reservations or anything.
Yeah, that's cool. And I mean, it also, like, when I did mine, it gave me just something to look forward to.
Yeah.
As we always talk about with HIA, like, our residents live in the most beautiful homes out there. And so I remember showing up kind of nervous. And then on top of knowing that the guys in the house were close to my age and going through the same thing as me, the house itself was just dope.
Yeah, it's awesome to see something so nice. Most people have never been in a house like that.
Yeah.
And so when you give them a tour and they see, especially at age 6 with the pond and the ping pong table and pool table, like, oh, I get to do this in sobriety, like sign me up.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to cast that vision over the phone is a little bit harder than casting a vision to them in person.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I mean, committing to a place that you're going to go live at and you haven't seen it yet, I can imagine seeing it first would definitely be, but that would be preferable.
Yeah, I wish I could do it with all of them, but obviously that's not possible.
But that's where my job comes in, to make sure I have good pictures on the website. So
yeah,
so
a lot of them say they're like, "Oh, is this on the website?" I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And I give them the address or the house number, and they get to see it on the website. And it's nice. It's cool to have that. So
for sure. So you oversee 2 homes in South OKC, H5, H6, and you're still a resident of the program.
Absolutely.
And how long have you been a resident?
I've been a resident since August of 2020.
Okay, and you've been on staff for?
A year this week.
A year this week? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, it's already been a year. I guess that does make sense.
I know, that's crazy. I was thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was telling Danny the other day, because he said, well, I'm still a noob. And I was like, well, when did you start? He said, August. I was like, okay, no, you're not a noob. Past that 90-day mark, I don't think you feel so new anymore.
I still feel new.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like it hasn't been a year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think that's because you're just having so much fun with it? Or?
Oh, I love it. Time flies, which is not always, like, the greatest thing. It's because, like, a year will go by. Like, I've been out here 3 years. I feel like I was just in Dallas, like, a year ago. Like, living the life I used to live, and I don't anymore. And it's been 3 years out here and a year on staff, and it feels like it's been like 6 months.
For sure. Yeah, I remember you first arriving. We didn't have a ton of interaction in the beginning because I was on the north side and you being on the south side. But your PM at the time was a friend of mine, so every now and again I would find my way down there.
It's awesome. It's I didn't have much interaction with the Hope is Alive for the first year. That was part of that surrender versus compliance. I was compliant to the rules, checking the boxes, but I wasn't surrendered, so I didn't like do the extra stuff. I didn't go to the HIA days. I didn't go to the sobriety sprint, stuff like that. Like, I wasn't involved in that because I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be involved. Yeah. Until I found out that it was a lot more fun and a lot more freeing being involved rather than not.
Gotcha. Well, we'll come back to that in a minute because I know that's an exciting part of your story and really where, the Trevor we are here with today, that's where you began. But let's go back a little bit. I ask everyone the same question when they come on. When did you first get introduced to substance?
I was about 14 years old.
Such a popular number, 14 or 15.
I was in 8th grade, going into 9th grade this summer, and my friends had already started smoking weed and stuff like that. And I wanted to hang out with them that day, and they were like, well, we're going to smoke weed, and you don't do that, so you can't come. And I was like, oh, I'm smoking weed today then. So I first got introduced to marijuana first, smoked that. I didn't try anything else for about a year, and I didn't smoke any more marijuana. I was still afraid of drugs.
Sure.
I have an uncle in addiction, my dad's brother, and he's never been around, and I just didn't want to be that person.
Yeah.
I was a bad child. I was always in trouble, but I made good grades. And I didn't get in trouble, like, legally.
Kind of balanced out. You may have been a little troublemaker, but at least you got your schoolwork done. And
yeah, I was gonna graduate top of my class, and I was doing good. So I tried to stay that way, and I didn't want to do drugs or alcohol until I found alcohol. And I drank. I was about 15 when I first drank, and I loved it. I felt different. I always felt different in my own skin. I was pretty popular. I had a lot of friends, but I didn't feel like I was actually their real friend, and they weren't my real friend.
Why do you think you felt that way?
I felt different. My mom passed away when I was 4, and my dad. I had a great stepmom. I had a great dad. I don't know why I felt different.
Sure, just felt different.
Yeah, they were both very great parents. I used my mom's death as a crutch, I guess. Later to know that it wasn't her fault and I shouldn't use it as a crutch, but I tried to. I couldn't find any excuse.
I mean, that's the way it is for a lot of people, and that's why I love doing these stories. If you're listening out there and that's you, I mean, don't get me wrong. A lot of people who come in here, and not just Hope is Alive, but in recovery in general, they've got a really dark past.
Yeah.
And they have all the reason in the world to have started using drugs or drinking. Not to say that's the right solution. I'm saying I can understand how that could have happened. I didn't really.
I didn't at all.
I know you and I are both from Dallas. Not that it's just a coincidence, but I mean, yeah, I grew up in a good home, good family, good brother, good school, played sports. I mean, I wasn't a star athlete, but I played sports and did all the normal stuff. Sometimes it just happens.
Yeah, I grew up in a great home. Yeah. My dad and my mom now they're awesome people, very loving people. They took care of me, met my needs. I grew up in a great area, and I just defied all leadership in my life. I didn't want to listen to anybody who was a leader in my life. So I didn't, and it led me to using drugs and alcohol. And I like the way I feel when I drink and when I use, and so I didn't want to stop that either. And if my dad told me to do something, I was probably doing the opposite.
Gotcha.
Today I listened to him. It's a great day. But I wish I would have listened to him growing up because it would have been a lot better.
Sure. So. At the same point in time, though, when we look back on things we wish we could have done differently, I know it's hard not to do it. I met up with my dad a couple months ago. We were having dinner, and he was like, have you ever thought about if you would have done this different or that different? Mm-hmm. And what good does it do at this point? Yeah. The way I see it, I was always headed down. It was always going to end this way for me, or dead or in prison.
Yep.
And so it's not wrong to look back and, recognize what we could have done differently. But to wish you had done differently, I think it's a dangerous thought. Oh,
absolutely. I always tell people I don't regret doing it because it would have led me to a different path than where I'm at today.
Sure.
And I love my life today. I do think about if I would have listened to my dad, that life would have gone a lot smoother. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have to dealt with the stuff I dealt with. But that's in the past. I try to live in the present as much as possible because my life today is great. I'm a child of God. I have a great relationship with my parents, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
That I didn't get to a breaking point where I lost that. So,
what would you say was your rock bottom moment that led you to think, okay, I've got a problem and maybe I should get some help?
Yeah. So I was pretty deep in addiction from 16 to 22 when I came out here. Mm-hmm. But I was at a point, so the night before I went to rehab, I hadn't been seeing my parents much, if at all.
But let's back up. So why were you going to rehab? Was it just at that point?
Yeah.
It was just time?
So I hit a rock bottom.
Yeah.
And my parents had been talking to rehab for a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. And I was walking the street in the middle of the rain. It's 2:00 in the morning. I had left this party pretty much, and I was miserable, man. I'd been miserable for a couple months. I was living on a person's couch, and just not happy.
Yeah.
And you know who you call when you have nobody to call? Your parents.
Sure.
And I called my dad, and it's I need help. I don't know what I was trying to get out of the situation I was in.
Yeah.
I was looking to go home, and I was sober walking down the street. Like the drugs have wore off, the alcohol had wore off, and it's pouring down rain at like 2 a.m. I'm freezing and it sucked. And so I called my dad. My dad's like, if I come pick you up right now, you're going to rehab tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I wasn't really wanting to go to rehab. I wanted to get out of the situation I was in. So I for the first time in my life, I said yes. And that led me to rehab and then led me out here. I don't know if it was a God moment for sure. And I didn't believe in God at the time. I never really believed in God. So it was a God moment though. He was like, I'm gonna bring you to me. If you're not gonna come find me, I'm gonna bring you to me. And that's what he did.
Sure. You know, and your story is one that's interesting to me because obviously, you know, not just your struggle with addiction, but for a lot of people who come to Hope is Alive, their story of addiction ends there. Which is awesome, you know, when they come in the door, and some of them never have a drink again. And but for some of us, yourself included, coming in the doors of Hope is Alive isn't necessarily enough. And you mentioned earlier a phrase that Lance has used a lot, you know, checking the boxes. So would you tell our listeners kind of what you mean by that? Like, you know, what does checking the box mean? Yeah,
so I use a term called compliance versus surrender. It comes from my sponsor. He taught it with me. And so like true surrender is actually like putting your hands on the work, right? And checking the boxes, complying, it's like telling your program manager what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Like I've read that book, you really didn't read it. You have it, you didn't read it.
That's one that I've talked about so much on here is the reading.
Yeah.
And I talk about it because I remember when I tried to get through the first phase of the program, and it took me a minute because of the books. And I kind of figured out, I was like, well, if I tell him I read this, what's he going to do? Like quiz me?
Yeah.
Like ask for a book report? Like, no, I don't have time for that. But I'll know.
Yeah. And that's usually what happens. And that's what happens with me. It's I was checking the boxes, man. I was good to be around. I went to meetings. I didn't do anything in the meetings. I didn't get a sponsor. I didn't work any stats. I said I did, you know, because what is my program manager going to say? He doesn't know. And that finally led up to a drink or a relapse in the program because like between checking the boxes and actually doing it is a lot of like spiritual warfare. Yeah. Like you're holding something in that shouldn't be held in, and I'm lying to everybody around me. I'm not telling the truth. And where does lying ever get you? In my addiction, it got me nowhere. I lied to everybody, and everybody knows the truth. Yeah. And you can see it on, you know, you can see it on my face. I was miserable. And I finally had to take a drink. And then after that, I surrendered.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, in talking about the relapse that you had while you were in the program, when you came into the program, were you just doing this for somebody else? Or were you just doing it to get people off your back? Like, what was your end game when you even came in?
I didn't have an end game. I was getting people off my back. I was in a very, like, where Dallas was just not good. I was tired of being there. I do have a couple good friends out there. Still this day I talk to, and they're they're very prominent in my sobriety, but the rest of them were just bad people. You know, gangbangers, terrible people in addiction, like deep in addiction. And I wanted to get away from that, but also wanted my parents off my back too. Like every time I talked to my parents, like, oh, you have a problem. And I knew I had a problem, but I'd deny it, right? No, I'm good. Like I'm just struggling right now, or whatever the answer may be. And when I got here, I was like, I'll just stay here for a month. But as energetic as I am, I'm very lazy. So the month kept going to another month. And I had a good friend that graduated the program. He told me, he's the only person I trusted out here. And he was like, you're not leaving. And you're not leaving. You're going to work for them. And I was like, I am not working for Hope is Alive, dog. I'm not doing it.
He's talking to the lazy checkbox Trevor and saying, you're going to work for them?
Yeah, work for him. Like, you know, eventually, like, he could see something in me I didn't see in myself. But shout out him. He's a big mentor in my life today.
Who are we talking about?
Colby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Colby Phillips, man. Shout him out.
I think I actually graduated with Colby.
Yeah.
Rock and roll.
He's awesome, man. He told me every month. I was like, man, I'm leaving at the end of this month. He's like, no, you're not. And no, you're not. And when I relapsed, he brought me back in, like, with arms. He was a big leader in my life, showed a lot of Jesus to me. He knew a lot about the Bible and stuff. And he kind of came from a similar situation to me. And he was, like, a lot further off than me. And I just listened to him, man. And I was still checking boxes, but after that relapse, I spent a lot of money on that relapse, and I couldn't sustain that.
Yeah.
And my sponsor I have today had called me in the hotel. The only person who reached out to me, and he's like, if you need anything, I'm here to help. And I was like, I need your help. And, he had 11 years of sobriety at the time.
Yeah.
10 years of sobriety. And I was like, I need your help. And he was like, okay, well, we'll get to work tomorrow. And I've still to this day, I've never argued with him. Everything he's told me I've done it to a T. I didn't lie about anything when I did my 4th and 5th step. I told him everything. And that's where that surrender came from. It wasn't like a profound moment or anything. It was just a decision in my head that I was going to be better than who I was.
Yeah.
And that being miserable was not an option anymore.
But would you say that, and that's all so amazing, so well said, brother. But, the reason I asked about the end game and what your plan was when you came in is, like, so many times there's a lot of people that'll ask, they'll all but ask you, what is the secret to sobriety? And I always say, I'm like, when I was like a year in, I would be like, there's no secret sauce to this. I don't know what to tell you. Like, but really, if there was, I'm not saying there is, but in my opinion, and what I've learned is, if there is a secret to sobriety, it's you have to do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to want to do it.
That is the secret.
Yeah.
I quit doing it for show or for anybody else, and I started doing it for myself. Like, I was like, at first I was doing it for, like, to make my parents happy or make my friends happy or make my program manager happy.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't working because I was lying for one, but for two, like, I wasn't doing it for myself. And you see a lot of times people who come in, they're like, oh, my mom made me come here. Okay. Well, what about yourself? Like, what do you think? And that's what I thought. Is like, I was doing it for everybody else and it wasn't working. And I've always done it for everybody else. Anything good in my life was because I wanted to make my dad happy or whatever it was. But now, like, I do it for myself. I don't do it for anybody else. Like, I don't want any recognition from it either. Like, this is for me, like, internally. Like, spiritually, my heart, my soul, like, that, all that is for me. It's not for anybody else.
Can't be.
It can't be, or because it's not going to work.
It'll never be enough.
Yeah, and that's the perfectionism in us, right? And it's never enough. Like, I set out to achieve X, and I really want 2X, and it's that same cycle over and over again. Instead of being satisfied with who I am today and that I know I have work to do, rather than before when it wasn't working, is I didn't have any work to do. Like, I was okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sober, Dad. Like, look at me now. I'm 9 months in this thing. Can I come home now? And that was my thought process before, rather than now. It's like, like, I'm happy with doing this for myself and truly for myself and no one else. Very
well said. I mean, one of the things I've always thought about, because this, I've been sober for 4 years now.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. And I've said this, it's not my first time trying to get sober. And anytime I tried to do it for somebody else in the past, basically what would happen is, like, they would stop giving me affirmation. Mm-hmm. And because as far as they're concerned, like, all right, this is what you should be doing. Yeah. This is what you should have been doing all along. And so if you're out there listening to this and you've heard, what Trevor has to say, really heed those words. It has to be for you. I'm telling you, it has to be for you. That Absolutely. Is the secret sauce. If you want it, it's there. Mm-hmm. Nothing worthwhile is ezy, though, is it?
No, absolutely. It's been the hardest 2 years of my life. Mm-hmm. I'm coming up on 2 years sobriety on the 2nd of April, and it's been the hardest by far. And the job's not easy. Like, as you know, you've been doing the job for a long time. That this job's not easy, but it's worth it.
Sure.
Right. And there's no growth in comfortability. Like, you need to be uncomfortable to grow, but there's also, like, nothing that's worth it comes easy. Right. And that's where the hard part comes in. That's where you get that satisfaction from. We teach a meeting on Wednesday nights about, it's a bondage breaker meeting, but it talks about our significance, our acceptance, and our security. And we get that from affirmations and stuff like that, rather than now getting it from our connection with Jesus Christ, right? Like, I don't need somebody to tell me I'm doing a good job anymore because God's already told me that in his word.
Yeah.
Right. And finding that point of surrender comes a long way. Like, I found that, like, recently, right? It wasn't like I surrendered day one and I gave everything to him, right? Like, I still have reservations. I hate talking to God about my finances, right? Because I want to hold on to that, right? But until you give it to him, that's when it comes back, you know, and you reap the reward from that. But I was also trying to get those affirmations, right, when I was first here.
We love affirmations.
Yeah, I love them to death.
I mean, I don't care who you are in this whole thing. Like, who doesn't love someone giving you an attaboy?
No, nobody. If you don't, then there's something wrong with you, right?
Anytime someone's like, "Oh, don't give me praise," I'm like, "Stop it!"
Yeah.
Like, we all love.
But you shouldn't seek that out, right?
Right.
Instead of seeking that out, you should seek it for yourself, right? And give your own affirmations. I tell my residents all the time, get 5 sticky notes and put it on your mirror every morning and write 5 good things about you. Because we all struggle as addicts and alcoholics with we're not good enough. Like, we're, with outcasts, like, and we hate ourselves. Well, most of us when we get here do not love ourselves. And if we do, we love ourselves too much and we have an ego problem. So
Absolutely.
It's either or. And so, like, giving affirmations and receiving them, and that's why we get them nowadays, is because we give the person behind us affirmations. Like, even if they're not doing a great job, I still tell them they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Because nobody's told them that in years.
Yeah, how long's it been since they've heard that?
Yeah, I didn't hear it for, I'll tell you a quick story is my dad over Christmas, and this is 2.5 years into this thing. I had a slip up, but other than that, like, he had seen improvement. And that's the first time he's told me he's proud of me. He told me over Christmas, he said, "I'm proud of you, son." And he really meant it. And that's the first time I got a true affirmation that really, like, stuck to me in a long time, right? But it took 2.5 years. It wasn't like it was overnight. But we burned these bridges down for 16, 15, 5 years, whatever it is. I got a resident that's was in addiction for 30 years. And, like, it's not like it's going to come back overnight. You know what I mean? And those affirmations are good, but you need to... you don't need to rely on those and depend on those, right?
Well, like you said, it can't be the reason you're doing something. You can't go seeking it. I talk to my team about it all the time with all the work we do on the media side of things. And it's tough, right? Especially cutting videos, cutting reels, putting out social posts, all this kind of stuff for events. It's really easy to sit there and be like, cutting, and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be so sick. Like, when Lance sees this, or when Allie sees, whoever, like, they're going to love me so much. It's like, back up. Is that the reason we're making this? Like, no, we want to put it out there.
Absolutely.
So that somebody can see what life at Hope is Alive is like, so that they can see that it's possible for them, for their loved one, for whoever. But it's tough.
It is tough. Sometimes it's real tough, like with, as a program manager too, is it's really tough to, there's a lot of work we do that, like, doesn't get seen. Yeah. And sometimes you don't reap the benefit. Like, you pour into somebody for like 11 months and they relapse and in some cases die, right? And you're like, why am I doing this? Like, am I really not doing that good of a job? And that's where you have to, like, that's when you start doing it for yourselves and you realize, like, this is for me, man. This is for, not only to help the next man, because it is, like, we're helping other people get what we got, but, like, if we quit realizing that we're doing it for ourselves, and, like, that we're the same boat, like, I'm still in the same boat as my new guy today. I'm just one step ahead is what I tell people. Like, I got the curriculum before you. You know what I mean?
I remember Lance used to, he still says this, but he used to say it a lot more when I first came in, because he would be at a lot of our Sunday night men's meetings, is like, you're all in the same boat, but if you've been here a day longer than the guy next to you, you're a leader.
Absolutely. Grant says that a lot.
Grant,
yeah,
of course
he got it from Lance.
Got it from Langer, yeah.
He, and that's what I started telling people. It's like, people mistake that they're not a leader because they're not a program manager, they're not a house manager, or they don't have 2 years of sobriety. I'm like, no, you're a leader because somebody new that has less sobriety than you is looking at you like you're the most profound thing in this world right now. Because I did. When I got here, and I went to primary purpose group for the first time, and they're, like, naming off, like, 25 years of sobriety and stuff like that. I was like, these guys are lying.
Right.
Nobody
There's
gets
no way.
25 years of sobriety.
Yeah.
That is insane. But, I thought that was like, some of them guys were like giants.
Yeah.
Like spiritual, like, warfare. Because I didn't know Jesus at the time when I first went to primary purpose group. I was just trusting my sponsor and taking direction from him. And I'm like, dude, these guys are crazy. How did you get 25
years over here?
Yeah. And that's what people in the program think. And that's what I thought with my program manager, with, at first with Riley, with Luke, with Grant. I'm like, dude, these guys are like pillars, Brett.
Yeah.
And they only had like a year longer than me.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, dude, these guys are like the most profound humans in the entire universe.
Yeah, the first friend I made when I came in to the program, he was my house manager. We ended up becoming really, really good friends. He had, when I got here, he had 16 months. I had 9 days when I came in, and I remember being like, 16 months?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, like, what have you, how?
How? Literally, how did
How's that
you do
even a
it?
thing? And you've been in this house the whole time?
Yeah. That's insane.
It just seemed so wild to me. Which is another good point to bring up. You know, a lot of residents who want a future trip and worry about how long they're going to be here and how long it's going to take. I mean, like you said with the guys at PPG that had all that sobriety. I remember going to one of my first AA meetings at the May Club and being kind of blown away at guys that were getting a 2-year chip.
Yeah.
And I remember being on the phone with my mom and being like,
There's no way.
I'm like sitting here struggling to get to 30 days.
Yeah.
And these guys are celebrating 2 years. That's going to take like 2 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
You know, but it's not a race.
It's not.
And there's no finish line to this thing anyways.
Never. I was told one time that like you never stop doing what you started. Like we had Andy speak on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like with 18 years of sobriety, he's still coming to speak at people. He's at every meeting I've ever been to, unless he has something come up and like that. And that's like there's no finish line to this. And
right.
I try to tell my guys that you're never gonna like finish. So quit worrying about when you're gonna leave. What is 18 months? What's 2 years of? Sometimes they've been in it for 30 and they're like, oh, I got to get out of here. What do you got to do? Like you just ruined your life for 30 years. Like just sit down and enjoy the ride.
Yeah. And, you know, we talk about that a lot on here. Where do you really run them back to? You know, and I understand with a lot of guys and a lot of girls, you know, it's like, okay, you've got a husband at home or a wife at home or kids at home. I get that. And don't get me wrong, like, I don't expect everyone to do 3 years like you and I will have done in the houses. You know, to each his own. Having said that, there's something about finishing that'll hit you here.
Especially because we don't
usually finish anything. And you've got to make sure, right? Like, you might have a wife to go back to. You might have a husband to go back to. I totally get that if you're listening. But are you your best self?
Exactly. That's what it's about. It's not about when you leave or when you graduate and stuff. It's about when you're ready.
Right.
Right. When God says you're ready. When
you're going to be any good to them if you go home.
And that's what I tell the guys with the wife and the kids is like, what are you trying to get out of this? Are you going to go back and be the same dad you were before? Because I deal with the men. Are you going to be back, the same son you were before? Or are you going to change something while you're here, work on yourself, finish it entirely, and when you come home, to them that you're the husband you're supposed to be. You're the child of God. You're the son of God that you're supposed to be. It's not about how long you spend here. I've seen guys graduate in a year, still sober today, still prominent father that they're supposed to be and stuff, and I've seen people stay 3 years and be the same thing. Like you said, like not everybody stays 3 years like us. Not everybody works for us either, though. So
sure. Well, there
it
is
helps
that.
when you're working for them. Where else am I going to go?
I remember when I tried to graduate the first time, and I remember Lance asking me point blank. That's all he said is he was just like, "Where are you going?"
I know. Ali and Grant told me they laughed at me.
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey, can I graduate in July?" And they're like, and they walked off. I was like,
"Oh, take that as a no."
Yeah. I was like, I thought it was good. I thought I was leaving. So.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I got turned down to graduate twice, not because I hadn't done the phase work.
Yeah.
And once was by Lance, once was by Allie, but both times it was the same question of what's the rush?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Why not be the best you can be? Why not milk this thing for all you can get out of it?
Mm-hmm. I finished the whole program about a little under a year ago. But I'm going back through stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm working the SLAA steps with Chase right now. And I'm going to start the Coda steps over again, like just because you never learn too much, right?
Sure.
I'm reading I'm going back to the New Testament right now. I try to read the Bible once a year now because I'm going to learn something new. And why, if I'm here and I'm a leader that I'm supposed to be, how can you lead somebody if you're not doing it yourself, right?
Boom. Mic drop.
Yeah.
Man, it's been so much fun talking with you today, Trev.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I always love whenever you and I get a chance to talk.
I loved it, man. I appreciate you having me.
And we'll have you back again. Potentially bring on some of your guys, some of the residents on the south side here when we get them back for season 3. If this is your first time listening to the Hope Dealers podcast, even if it's not your first time, please like, subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Follow our Hope Dealers Instagram. It's at Hope Dealers. And be sure to follow Hope is Alive on Instagram at Hope is Alive, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Hope is Alive. Okay. And we will see you again next time for the Hope Dealers podcast. Have a great day.